Mary Hamilton took a deep breath as she brewed her herbal tea in the kitchen of her Chicago apartment, where the morning sunlight streamed in. Feeling tightness in her abdomen, she gently placed her hand on her swollen belly. Being 5 months pregnant was one of the happiest moments of her life. "How are you feeling?" David, her husband, embraced her from behind and kissed her shoulder. "A little tired, but happy," Mary smiled. "I'm planning to check out the venue for the baby shower today. Mom said she picked out the perfect place." A momentary tension crossed David's face. "I'm surprised your parents are planning it." "Yes. I was surprised too," Mary answered honestly. "After Caitlin's miscarriage, my parents were pretty distraught." Mary gazed at the Chicago skyline outside her window. Thinking about her family stirred up complicated emotions. She had always been expected to be the strong daughter, while her sister Caitlin was frail since childhood, and the family's attention was constantly focused on her. Even after college graduation, Mary remained at home, caring for her sickly sister while working to support the family. She had repeatedly sacrificed career opportunities and chances to study abroad for her family. Her parents would say, "Mary is strong, she'll be fine," pretending not to notice her sacrifices. 3 years ago, as her career in real estate began to take off, Mary fell in love with her colleague David, and they married last year. It was the first time she had prioritized her own happiness. And now, she was expecting her long-awaited first child. On the surface, her family celebrated Mary's pregnancy, but her mother Elizabeth had secretly said, "Caitlin should have had a child before you." Caitlin had married Jason, a doctor, 2 years ago and had wanted to get pregnant right away, but hadn't been able to conceive. After Mary announced her pregnancy, miraculously, Caitlin became pregnant too. Their parents were overjoyed and placed more importance on Caitlin's pregnancy than Mary's. Mary sincerely wished for her sister's happiness and downplayed her own pregnancy joy to support her sister. However, during Mary's 6th month of pregnancy, Caitlin suddenly miscarried. The entire family was deeply saddened, especially her parents, who became consumed with thoughts of Caitlin. When Mary tried to discuss her baby shower at this time, her mother coldly dismissed her, saying, "This is not the time to be thinking about such things." Still, a week later, her parents contacted her saying, "We've planned a baby shower for you." Mary was surprised and grateful, but felt something was off. "Families are complicated, David," Mary said, squeezing her husband's hand. "Yours especially," David answered frankly. "They're not fair to you. They don't seem to realize how much you've sacrificed for them." "Their family," Mary made excuses as usual. "They have their own way of showing love." David said nothing, but concern showed in his eyes. He worried about Mary continuing to sacrifice herself for her family. But knowing his wife's strength and patience, he respected her judgment. "What's the plan for today?" David changed the subject. "Mom called. She's reserved Blue Sky, the most reputable restaurant in Chicago. I'm going to meet her to discuss the baby shower arrangements." "That's wonderful," David answered with a smile. "It seems your family is finally acknowledging your happiness." Mary smiled, but deep down, something bothered her. She felt uneasy about her parents' sudden change in attitude. But today was the baby shower planning meeting she had been looking forward to. After years of living up to her family's expectations, Mary wanted to believe that the day had finally come when she would receive blessings for herself. Mary parked her car in front of a Blue Sky, a high-end restaurant in Chicago's River North district. The city was vibrant on this weekend afternoon, but her heart was unsettled. Still, she put on a smile as she got out of the car and took a deep breath. Her light blue maternity dress complemented her eyes, shimmering in the spring sunshine. "What a lovely restaurant," Mary murmured to herself. She had mixed feelings about her parents choosing such an upscale restaurant for her. Having felt like a second priority in her family for years, she couldn't believe this sudden consideration. Entering the restaurant, she was greeted by elegant decorations and a refined atmosphere. Crystal chandeliers sparkled from the ceiling, and tables with white tablecloths were neatly arranged. Reservation for Hamilton? The hostess asked politely. Yes, Mary replied. For a baby shower. Of course, we've been expecting you, the hostess smiled warmly. We've prepared a private dining room. This way, please. Mary followed the hostess down a quiet hallway away from the main dining area. Feeling her baby's heartbeat, she was filled with gratitude for this day. After years of serving her family, she finally had her own day of celebration. Here we are, the hostess stopped in front of a decorated door and smiled at Mary. Congratulations. Thank you, Mary replied sincerely. After the hostess left, Mary took a deep breath. Her parents, sister, and friends should be waiting behind the door. With her heart full of joy and anticipation, she reached for the door. Expecting to hear "Congratulations, Mary," when she opened the door, her smile froze. The room was empty. There was just one table with a white tablecloth, and a small envelope placed on it. No decorations, no words of congratulations, just silence to greet her. What is this? Mary entered the room, confused. Had she gotten the time wrong? She checked her phone, but it was indeed the appointed time. With trembling hands, she picked up the envelope on the table. Her name was written in her father's handwriting. Anxiety gripped her chest. Opening the envelope, she found a note and several sheets of paper. Mary unfolded the note and began to read. To Mary. Now that Caitlin has lost her baby, you don't have the right to be happy alone. We've decided to end our relationship with you. We want you to repay all the money we've spent on raising and educating you. A detailed invoice is enclosed. This is our final word to you. Robert and Elizabeth. The color drained from Mary's face. Her vision blurred, and she felt unsteady. She collapsed into a nearby chair. With shaking hands, she took out the enclosed invoice. It was itemized in detail: education costs from kindergarten through college, food expenses for 18 years, medical costs, and more, totaling $380,000. Is this a joke? Mary stared at the paper in disbelief. She felt a pain in her chest and couldn't breathe. Her baby moved inside her, bringing her back to reality. Suddenly, the door opened, and a concerned waiter peered in. Ma'am, are you all right? Are the other guests still coming? Mary stood up, trying to hide her distress. No, it seems they won't be coming. Please cancel the reservation. Certainly. Would you like to order something to eat? No, thank you. After the waiter left, Mary sat down again, staring at the letter and invoice. She wasn't aware of the tears streaming down her cheeks. Never in her life had she felt so betrayed and abandoned. Why? She whispered in a trembling voice. Why would they do this? Mary had always devoted herself to her family. Even after graduating from college, she had sacrificed her career to stay home, taking care of her sickly sister while working to support the family. She had given up her dream of studying abroad and prioritized her family's happiness over her own desires. And now, just when she had finally found her own happiness, this was how they treated her. Mary finally found the strength to stand up. She carefully tucked the invoice and letter into her handbag and staggered out of the restaurant. Outside, she spotted a familiar car across the parking lot. It was her parents' car. And standing next to it were her parents and sister. They had been watching her reaction. Mary stopped in her tracks. When her parents and sister saw her, they got into their car without a word and drove away. At the last moment, Caitlin looked back, and their eyes met. There was sadness and regret in her eyes, but she too said nothing as she got into the car. With tears blurring her vision, Mary returned to her car. Sitting in the seat, she rested her forehead on the steering wheel and broke down sobbing. Her baby moved again, and she instinctively placed her hand there. It's okay, baby, she whispered. You have mommy and daddy. That's enough. Before starting the engine, Mary took a deep breath to calm her emotions. She considered calling David but wasn't ready to sort through her feelings yet. Instead, she decided to go straight home. As she drove, anger and sadness intermingled in Mary's heart. But beneath that, something like determination began to sprout. She had endured enough. She had sacrificed enough. "It's time to end this," she said quietly. Thinking about the invoice her parents had sent, memories flooded back to her. How she had secretly supported them when her father's investments failed and the family struggled financially. How she had nursed her mother without compensation during her illness. How she had covered Caitlin's expensive medical treatments. Her own dreams and time sacrificed for the family. Invoice. Mary couldn't help but smile. It was a smile tinged with sadness, but with strength hidden within. "If they're sending me an invoice, perhaps it's time I send them one too." By the time she reached her apartment, a new determination had blossomed in Mary's heart. There were no more tears, strength resided in her eyes. Though hurt by her family's actions, she had resolved to stand up for herself and her baby. "Mary, what happened?" David immediately sensed something was wrong when he saw his wife's face. Mary quietly closed the door and entered the living room. Her expression was hard, her eyes red and swollen, but there was a new light of determination in them. It wasn't a baby shower. Mary took out the envelope from her handbag with trembling hands. "This was my family's gift." David took the envelope with a confused expression and began to read the contents. As he read on, his face turned red with anger. "Unbelievable. They're insane," David was furious. How could parents do this to their own child? Mary sat on the sofa, covering her face with both hands. The emotions she had been suppressing for so long burst forth at once. "I've always been there for them," she said, crying. "Even after college, I sacrificed my career to stay home. I gave up my dream of studying abroad to pay for Caitlin's medical expenses. And yet." David sat next to Mary and embraced her. Over the years, he had seen how Mary sacrificed herself for her family. But this betrayal was beyond imagination. "You don't owe them anything," David said quietly but firmly. "If anything, they owe you." Those words sparked a memory in Mary. She suddenly looked up. "Yes." She slowly stood up and headed to the study. "David, can you help me?" From the closet in the study, Mary pulled out a large cardboard box labeled, "Family Papers." She placed the box on the floor and opened the lid. "What's this?" David asked with curious eyes. "Evidence of my relationship with my family over the past 10 years, Mary answered quietly. She began taking out documents one by one. "Right after I graduated from college, my father failed in his investments and took on a lot of debt. I gave most of my starting salary to them so they wouldn't lose the house." She continued to take out more documents. Bank transfer records, payment certificates, handwritten notes, all organized chronologically. Caitlin's expensive treatments, my parents' mortgage payments, my father's debt restructuring after his business failure, I secretly paid for it all. David looked at the documents with a surprised expression. "You paid for all of these?" Mary nodded. "My father was a proud man. He didn't want his financial failures known to the world. So I supported them behind the scenes, while pretending on the surface that my father was paying for everything." David was trying to understand the situation while checking the documents one by one. "So your family thought they were financially independent, but actually you were supporting everything behind the scenes?" "Yes," Mary answered while organizing the mountain of documents. "My father asked me to keep my support secret from the other family members for the sake of his pride. He made my mother and Caitlin believe that he had solved everything." David held his head. "Good grief. And they sent you an invoice for $380,000? Ironic, isn't it?" Mary gave a bitter smile. "In reality, the amount I've paid them is much more." She took out another file and handed it to David. It contained a detailed record of expenditures over the past 10 years. The total amounted to $670,000. Why such detailed records? David asked in surprise. Mary gazed out the window as she answered. At first, it was just for household management. But as time went on, I began to feel something was wrong. My father would accept my support but always ignored my contributions at the company. My mother prioritized Caitlin over me and didn't consider my feelings. And Caitlin. She faltered. Didn't Caitlin know? David asked. No, none of them knew. My father made me promise that. For the family's honor, he said. Mary sighed. But thinking about it now, it wasn't for the family's honor but to protect my father's pride. David and Mary talked all night. Emotions ran high, tears flowed, and sometimes anger exploded. But by morning, a new determination shone in Mary's eyes. I need to show them the truth, she said with resolve on her face. I won't support them in secret anymore. I won't allow my value to be denied anymore. David squeezed his wife's hand. What are you going to do? First, I'll contact a lawyer, Mary answered calmly. I'll ask them to legally document all the financial support I've provided to my family over the past 10 years. She explained her plan further. At the same time, I'll work with an accountant to create detailed records of my expenditures for them. I'm going to create an invoice listing everything: my father's debt repayment, Caitlin's medical expenses, my parents' mortgage payments. Are you seeking revenge? David asked worriedly. Mary shook her head. This isn't revenge. This is about revealing the truth. Showing how unfair they've been to me. And above all, freeing myself from years of silence. From that day on, Mary took action. She contacted a reliable lawyer and accountant and began organizing detailed records of her support for her family. Every day after work, she spent hours in her study reviewing past records and finding necessary documents. A week passed, and all preparations were complete. Mary's lawyer had prepared legal documents supporting her claims, and her accountant had completed an invoice detailing her expenditures over the past 10 years. The total was an astonishing figure. $670,000, Mary murmured, staring at the invoice. This is what I've paid for my family. David placed his hand on her shoulder. Are you really going to send this? Mary answered while gazing out the window. I am. But not to demand money from them. I want them to know the truth. She attached a letter to the invoice. Dad, Mom, Caitlin. I received your invoice. Here is my invoice to you. This is a record of the financial support I have provided to you over the past 10 years. It includes repayment of Dad's debts after his investment failure, Caitlin's medical expenses, mortgage payments, and more. However, this invoice is not a demand for repayment. I just want you to know the truth. Now that you've decided to abandon me, I will no longer support you in secret. I will live my life and my child's life. Because I love you, I'm telling you the truth. Mary. Mary slowly sealed the envelope containing the letter and invoice. Her hands were trembling, but her heart was strong and full of determination. I'll send this tomorrow, she told David. And then I'll start a new life. That night, Mary slept peacefully for the first time in a long while. Her baby was moving energetically in her belly. As if blessing the mother's new determination. It's okay, baby, Mary whispered gently. We'll be strong. And we'll live surrounded by people who understand the true meaning of family. It was a rainy Wednesday morning when the mail carrier came to the Hamilton family's front door. Robert opened the door and received the envelope. The moment he saw the sender's name, his expression clouded. Who's it from? Elizabeth's voice came from the kitchen. It's from Mary, Robert reluctantly answered. He brought the envelope to the living room and sat on the sofa. Elizabeth and Caitlin also gathered around him, driven by curiosity. Since the baby shower last week, they had not been in contact with Mary at all. They had expected words of anger or pleas from their daughter, but such a prompt reply was unexpected. "Open it," Elizabeth urged. As Robert slowly opened the envelope and took out the contents, a thick bundle of documents appeared. On top was a handwritten letter. The room fell silent as he read the letter aloud. Robert's voice was trembling when he uttered the last words. He turned to the documents following the letter. It was a detailed invoice. As he turned page after page, his face turned pale. "What is this?" Elizabeth was confused and took the documents from her husband. She also began to read and was shocked by the contents. "Is this true? Mary gave us this much money." Caitlin also peered at the documents and took some of them. "My medical expenses," she said in a trembling voice. "Mary paid for them?" "Not Dad." Robert covered his face and sat down. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "It's true," he admitted in a low voice. "I failed in my investments, and we were about to lose everything. Mary offered to help. Without her support, we would have lost this house too." Elizabeth was furious. "Why didn't you tell me? For over 10 years, I knew nothing." "I was too proud," Robert's shoulders slumped. "I couldn't admit failure. I didn't want to show weakness to my wife and younger daughter." "And what did we do to such a daughter?" Elizabeth shook the documents. "During her happy time, we cut her off. Look at this invoice. See what Mary has done for us." Caitlin was in tears. "My college tuition, medical expenses, my sister paid for it all?" She trembled as she checked each item on the invoice. "I always only thought about myself. I didn't know what Mary had done for me." "She never mentioned it," Robert sighed. "That was our agreement. For the family's honor." "Honor?" Elizabeth raised her voice. "For your pride, right? And now, we've hurt our daughter. Instead of celebrating her pregnancy, we did such a terrible thing." Her words turned into sobs. "What horrible parents we are." The three of them sat in silence for a long time. The invoice and letter spread out on the coffee table revealed the truth of their lives. "We need to contact Mary," Caitlin was the first to stand up. "We need to apologize, explain." She took out her cell phone and called her sister's number, but the call was transferred to voicemail. "She's not answering," she slumped her shoulders. "Of course," Robert said quietly. "We betrayed her." Elizabeth stood up, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. "Let's go to her apartment. We must apologize in person." The three of them immediately got into the car and headed to Mary's apartment. But when they arrived, a new shock awaited them. According to the apartment manager, Mary and David had moved out 2 days ago. "Do you have their new address?" Elizabeth asked anxiously. "I'm sorry, but they asked me not to share their forwarding address," the manager apologetically replied. The three returned to the car, disappointed. "Let's try her company," Robert suggested. Upon arriving at the real estate company, they were guided by a receptionist. "We'd like to see Mary Hamilton." "I'm sorry, but Mrs. Hamilton has been transferred to another branch of our head office," the receptionist answered. "I cannot give you the specific location due to our privacy policy." They called Mary multiple times and sent emails, but there was no response. A week passed, and their anxiety grew day by day. "She's really left us," Elizabeth cried one night. "What we did is irreparable." Robert was also deeply remorseful. "My pride ruined everything. Mary was always there for us, but we didn't understand her." Caitlin was looking at a picture of her sister, thinking, "We may never have another chance to be a real family to her." A month later, an envelope arrived at their home. The sender was Mary's lawyer. Inside was a short letter and a photograph. The letter read, "Mary is currently spending time in a safe and peaceful environment. She has expressed her wish to refrain from contacting you for the time being. Please respect her choice. She and the baby are healthy, and she is due to give birth soon. The photo showed Mary with her belly greatly swollen. She was standing by the sea, smiling. David stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. They looked happy. Seeing that photo, the three of them shed tears. A sense of loss and regret enveloped them. They had to know the truth and accept the consequences of their actions. She hasn't cut us off completely, Caitlin said, staring at the photo. The fact that she sent a photo means she hasn't completely closed the door on her relationship with us. But on her terms, in her time, Robert showed understanding. We have no choice but to wait. And when she comes back, we must be prepared to welcome her as a true family. Elizabeth looked at her husband and daughter and nodded deeply. We must use this time to change. So we never hurt someone we love again. The three quietly held hands. They had a long road ahead, but for the first time, they were facing the truth and beginning to have the will to change. Mary's invoice didn't seek financial payment but truth and sincerity. And it was deeply etched in their hearts. Emma, Grandma, and Grandpa are coming. Are you ready? Mary called out to her 2-year-old daughter as she placed a vase of flowers on the living room table. Spring sunlight streaming through the window brightly illuminated the room. Yes. Emma's cheerful voice echoed, and she came running into the room with the sound of little footsteps. The girl, with golden curls bouncing and wearing a blue dress, had clear eyes sparkling just like her mother's. The doorbell rang, and David went to answer it. On the other side of the door stood Robert, Elizabeth, and Caitlin, looking tense. Please come in, David warmly welcomed them. Mary took a deep breath and headed to the entrance. Her reunion with her family had begun gradually since her daughter Emma was born. It started with communications through a lawyer, then progressed to short phone calls, and since last year, monthly visits. It wasn't an easy process. It took time to rebuild trust. But the new relationship built on truth and honesty had become stronger than before. Mary. Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears at the sight of her daughter. Thank you for always letting us see you. Mom, Dad, Mary responded quietly. There was no longer the tension in her voice that had been there before. Emma has been looking forward to seeing Grandma and Grandpa. Robert's face lit up when he saw his granddaughter. He knelt down to meet Emma at eye level. Would you show me the picture you drew for Grandpa? Emma nodded happily and took Robert's hand, leading him to the living room. Caitlin approached Mary and they quietly embraced. How are you, sister? I'm good, busy with a new project at work, but fulfilled, Mary smiled. And you? Thomas. We're fine. Thomas is at a friend's house today, Caitlin replied. A year ago, she and her husband Jason had adopted a 5-year-old boy named Thomas. The family gathered in the living room, having tea and conversing peacefully. The invoice incident 3 years ago had been a turning point for them. Robert had learned from his mistakes and now discussed economic problems openly rather than hiding them. He had begun working as a financial literacy instructor at a senior center, giving lectures on the theme learning from mistakes caused by pride. Elizabeth treasured her time with her granddaughter Emma while also striving to build a healthier relationship with Mary. She had inscribed the importance of loving without discrimination in her heart and respected both her daughters. Caitlin had worked most ardently to repair her relationship with her sister. She now worked as a counselor for an adoption support organization, sharing her own experience that family is not just about blood relations. After dinner, when Emma had gone to sleep, Mary joined her family on the deck to gaze at the starry sky. What is a true family? David quietly asked. Mary thought for a moment before answering. I think a true family is people who support each other even in difficult times, have the courage to admit mistakes and grow, and above all, build relationships based on honesty and respect. Everyone nodded quietly. After a painful journey, they were finally beginning to understand what that meant.